حنفاء لله غير مشركين به ومن يشرك بالله فكأنما خر من السماء فتخطفه الطير أو تهوي به الريح في مكان سحيق.
Become exclusively devoted to Allah, ascribing divinity to none other than Him. Whoso ascribes divinity to aught beside Allah, it is as though he fell down from the sky, whereafter either the birds will snatch him away, or the wind will sweep him to a distant place, causing him to be shattered to pieces.
59. In this parable, heaven means the original human nature. Man by nature is the servant of none else but Allah and inherently accepts the doctrine of Tawheed. That is why the one who follows the guidance of the prophets becomes firm in these dictates of his nature and soars higher and higher. On the other hand, the one who rejects Allah or associates a partner with him falls down from the heaven of his nature. Then he either becomes a victim of Satan's and evil leaders like the birds of the parable, which snatch away the fallen man, or he becomes a slave of his lusts, passions, whims, etc., which have been likened to the wind in the parable. They lower him down from one wrong position to the other till he falls into the deepest abyss of degradation.
ذلك ومن يعظم شعائر الله فإنها من تقوى القلوب.
Such is the fact, and whoso venerates the sanctity of all that have been ordained as symbols of Allah, surely does so because it is part of the true piety of the hearts.
60. Symbols of Allah, the performance of Salat, Hajj, fasting, etc., or things like a mosque or sacrificial offerings, etc. See Surah Al-Ma'idah, Ayat 2 and ENs 5-7 thereof. 61. That is, the observance of the sanctity of the symbols by a man is a proof that there is piety in his heart. On the other hand, the man who violates their sanctity proves himself to be void of piety and fear of God. It shows that he either does not believe at all in Allah or adopts a rebellious attitude against Him.
لكم فيها منافع إلى أجل مسمى ثم محلها إلى البيت العتيق.
You may derive benefit from sacrificial animals until an appointed time. Thereafter, their place of sacrifice is near the ancient house.
62. This is to remove the misunderstanding about getting any benefit from the animals dedicated for sacrifice, as they were also included in the symbols of Allah. This was necessitated because the Arabs believed that it was unlawful to get any benefit from them. One could neither ride on them nor carry any load on them nor consume their milk, after they had been dedicated for sacrifice during Hajj. In this verse that misunderstanding has been removed. Abu Huraira and Anas have reported that the Prophet, peace be upon him, saw a man walking in a miserable condition on foot leading his camel by the nose string. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked him to ride on it, he replied that it was his sacrificial offering. The Prophet, peace be upon him, again urged him to ride on his camel. There is a divergence of opinion in regard to the interpretation of an appointed term. Some commentators, particularly Ibn Abbas, Qatada, Mujahid, Dahak and Ata, are of the view that it refers to the time of the dedication of the animals for sacrifice. Obviously this is not the correct view, because in that case the permission to get benefit from them becomes meaningless. There are other commentators including Urwa bin Zubair and Ala bin Abi Rabah, who are of the view that appointed term means the time of sacrifice and one can get benefit from them up till then. One may ride on them, drink their milk, take their young ones for use and shear their hair, wool, etc. Imam Shafi'i has adopted this view. The Hanafites are of the opinion that one can get benefit from them, if need be, though it is preferable not to do so. 63. It does not mean that the sacrifice is to be made in the precincts of the ancient house of the Kaaba. The Quran uses the house of Allah or Masjid-i-Haram for the whole of the inviolable place of Mecca and not for that particular building. Surah Al-Ma'idah, Ayat 9-5.
وَلِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ جَعَلْنَا مَنسَكًا لِيَذْكُرُوا اسْمَ اللَّهِ عَلَى مَا رَزَقَهُم مِّن بَهِيمَةِ الْأَنْعَامِ فَإِلَٰهُكُمْ إِلَٰهٌ وَاحِدٌ فَلَهُ أَسْلِمُوا وَبَشِّرِ الْمُخْبِتِينَ.
For every people we have laid down a ritual of sacrifice, although the purpose of the ritual is the same, that they pronounce the name of Allah over the cattle He has provided them. Your Lord is one God, so submit yourselves to Him alone, and give, O Prophet, glad tidings to those that humble themselves before Allah.
64. This verse implies two things. 1. Sacrifice has been an essential part of the worship of one Allah in all the revealed religions. In order to inculcate Tawheed, Allah prohibited sacrifice for anyone other than Himself. This was in keeping with the other prohibitions which were made for others than Allah. For instance, prostration before anyone other than Allah, making vows for others than Allah, visiting holy places others than those prescribed by Allah, fasting in the name of others than of Allah, etc., were all prohibited. 2. The other thing which has been common in all the revealed religions was the object of the sacrifice in the name of Allah, though its details have been different in different religions, times and countries. 65. The Arabic word muhbatan has no equivalent in English. It includes those who 1. Give up pride, arrogance and adopt humility before Allah. 2. Surrender themselves to His service and slavery. 3. Accept His decrees sincerely.
الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَالصَّابِرِينَ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَهُمْ وَالْمُقِيمِ الصَّلَاةِ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ.
Whose hearts shiver whenever Allah is mentioned, who patiently bear whatever affliction comes to them, who establish prayer, and who spend for good purposes out of what we have provided them.
66. It means that righteous people spend their lawful provisions in the way of Allah to meet their own and their dependents' lawful needs, to help their relatives, neighbors and other needy people, on public works and propagation of the word of Allah. It does not include expenditure in unlawful ways for unlawful purposes. The Quranic term LNFAQ implies neither overspending nor being miserly and stingy, but spending one's wealth on himself and others according to his means and status in society.
وَالْبُدْنَ جَعَلْنَاهَا لَكُم مِّن شَعَائِرِ اللَّهِ لَكُمْ فِيهَا خَيْرٌ فَاذْكُرُوا اسْمَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهَا صَوَافَّ فَإِذَا وَجَبَتْ جُنُوبُهَا فَكُلُوا مِنْهَا وَأَطْعِمُوا الْقَانِعَ وَالْمُعْتَرَّ كَذَلِكَ سَخَّرْنَاهَا لَكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ.
We have appointed sacrificial camels among the symbols of devotion to Allah. There is much good in them for you, so make them stand at the time of sacrifice and pronounce the name of Allah over them. And when they fall down on their sides, after they are slaughtered, eat and also feed them who do not ask and those who ask. Thus have we subjected these animals that you may give thanks.
67. 7 persons can become partners in the sacrifice of one camel and likewise in the sacrifice of one cow and the like, as enjoined by the Prophet, peace be upon him, in a tradition reported by Jabir bin Abdullah in the collection of Hadith by Muslim. 68. That is, you should sacrifice animals because you get many benefits from them to show your gratitude to Allah, the giver, and also to acknowledge His supremacy and sovereignty. 69. Mention the name of Allah over them implies that animals should be slaughtered by pronouncing the name of Allah over them, because without that their flesh would be unlawful to eat. This shows that in the Islamic law there is no conception of slaughtering an animal without pronouncing the name of Allah over it. According to traditions, there are different wordings for pronouncing the name of Allah over the animals at the time of their slaughter. Some of these are sad face. Bismillahi Allahu Akbar, Allahumma minka walaka. In the name of Allah, Allah is most great. O Allah, this is thine and is presented to thee. 2. Allahu Akbar la ilaha il Allahu. Allahumma minka walaka. Allah is most great. There is no God but Allah. O Allah, this is thine and is presented to thee. 3. Inni wajjahtu wajhiya lillazi fatah as-samawati wal arda, hanifan wa ma ana min al-mushrikin. In salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alamin. La sharika lahu wa bi zalika umirtu wa ana min al-muslimin. Allahumma minks walaka. I have turned my face sincerely towards the being who created the heavens and the earth, and I am not from among the idolatrous people. My salat and my rites of worship and my life and my death are all for Allah, the Lord of the universe, who has no partner with Him. This is what I have been enjoined and I am the first to surrender to Him. O Allah, this is thine, and is presented to thee. 70. It should be noted that a camel is sacrificed while it is standing. This was enjoined by the Prophet, peace be upon him, and is supported by Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, Dahak, etc. Muslim and Bukhari have reported a tradition from Ibn Umar, who saw a man slaughtering his camel in the sitting position. He said to him, tie 1 foot of your camel and make it stand, because that is the way of Abu Qasim, peace be upon him. According to a tradition reported by Jabir bin Abdullah, in Abu Dawood, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his companions would tie a left foot of the camel and would make it stand on 3 feet, then they would slaughter it. 71. Then, when they are down on their sides, after slaughter, means till they die completely, for the Prophet, peace be upon him, prohibited to cut off a piece of flesh if there is still any sign of life in the slaughtered animal. If this is done, the piece of flesh would be unlawful. 72. This is another reason why animals should be sacrificed. Thus have we made them, animals, subject to you, that you may give thanks.
الله لحومها ولا دماؤها ولكن يناله التقوى منكم كذلك سخرها لكم لتكبروا الله على ما هداكم وبشر المحسنين لن ينال الله لحومها ولا دماؤها ولكن يناله التقوى منكم كذلك سخرها لكم لتكبروا الله على ما هداكم وبشر المحسنين.
Neither their flesh reaches Allah nor their blood. It is your piety that reaches Him. He has subjected these animals to you, that you may magnify Allah for the guidance He has bestowed upon you. Give glad tidings, O Prophet, to those who do good.
73. This prescribes a very important condition for the sacrifice made in the worship of Allah. A sacrifice is acceptable to Allah only if it is accompanied by piety and sincerity. Though sacrifice is a symbol of Allah, yet it has been made plain that it is accepted only if it is accompanied by piety, saying, neither their meat that reaches Allah nor their blood, but what reaches Him is the piety from you. This was also meant to condemn the ritual of the days of ignorance, when the Arabs took the flesh to the Kaaba and smeared its walls with the blood of the sacrificed animal. 74. That you may glorify Allah, at the time of sacrifice verbally also in order to acknowledge that the animals really belong to Allah and to no one else. One of the sentences uttered at the time of sacrifice is Allahumma minka walaka, O Allah, this animal is thine and is presented to thee. It should be noted that the command of sacrifice as contained in verses 36 and 37 is not for the pilgrims alone, and that the performance of sacrifice is not confined to Mecca on the occasion of Hajj. It is a general command for all those Muslims who are well off. They have been enjoined to be grateful to Allah because He has subjected these animals for the good of all human beings. Therefore they are required to sacrifice the animals during these days so that they may spiritually join those who go to Mecca to perform Hajj. There are many authentic traditions to the effect that the Prophet, peace be upon him, made sacrifice on this occasion, while he was personally at Al-Madinah. 1. The one who does not perform sacrifice even though he can, should not join us in the Eid prayer. Musnad Ahmad, Ibn Majah. 2. According to a tradition reported by Ibn Umar, the Prophet, peace be upon him, dwelt at Al-Madinah for 10 years and performed sacrifice every year. Tirmizi. 3. According to Anas, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, the one who sacrificed an animal before the Eid prayer, should offer another sacrifice, but the one who sacrificed his animal after the Eid prayer, did the right thing and followed the way of the Muslims. Bukhari. In this connection, it is noteworthy that no Eid prayer is held on the 10th of Zil-Hajj in Mecca. Therefore the injunction was meant for all Muslims and not only for those performing Hajj at Mecca. Thus, it is clear that the sacrifice on the occasion of Eid, which is observed in the entire Muslim world, is a sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and has been enjoined by him. The only dispute is whether it is obligatory in nature or only a sunnah. Ibrahim Nakhai, Imams Abu Hanifa, Malik, Muhammad and, according to a tradition, Imam Abu Yusuf too, are of the opinion that it is obligatory in nature. On the other hand, Imams Shafi'i and Ahmad bin Hanbal regard it only as a sunnah of the Muslims, and Sufyan Thawri has also agreed with them, saying that there will be no harm if a person does not offer a sacrifice. It is, however, an irony that some of the learned Muslims of our time, who follow neither the Quran nor the Sunnah, and are only guided by personal whims, have declared that if there is a consensus of opinion of the Muslims, they can give up the practice of sacrifice on the occasion of Eid.
إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُدَافِعُ عَنِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ خَوَّانٍ كَفُورٍ.
Surely, Allah defends those who believe. Certainly, Allah has no love for the perfidious, the thankless.
75. From here the address for the first time prepares the Muslims for jihad. In order to understand this, we should keep in view the preceding portion, verses 19 to 24, in which the ideological conflict between the two parties, believers and disbelievers, and the result thereof have been described. This naturally serves as a prelude to the armed conflict between the two parties. That is why in verses 26 to 37, the immediate causes which necessitated war have been stated to serve as an introduction and justification for war with the disbelievers of Mecca. After the migration to Al-Madinah, when the first Hajj season approached, it naturally brought along with it anguish and anger both for the Muhajirs and the Ansar, who had been debarred from visiting Mecca and performing Hajj. That is why, in this passage, verse 26 to 37, the rituals and the objects of Hajj have been described to bring home to the disbelievers that they had no right to debar anyone from Hajj. On the other hand, the Muslims are being prepared to fight not with the intention of wreaking vengeance but for the sake of reform. At the same time, sacrifice on the occasion of Hajj has been prescribed as a permanent right to enable them, and the Muslims of the whole world, to commemorate Hajj and the rites connected with it, so that they might refrain from wreaking vengeance on the people of Mecca for the persecution to which they had been subjected. They have, therefore, been enjoined to fight to bring about better conditions and not to take revenge on their persecutors. 76. The Arabic word mudafiat implies two things. 1. To fight with the enemy to ward off his aggressive attack. 2. To fight with the enemy not just once but whenever the need arises. Allah has assured the believers that He will defend them against the enemy every time there is a conflict between Islam and Kufr. This is to encourage the believers that they will not be left alone in their defense, but Allah Himself will be a party with them and will help them to frustrate the cunning designs of the enemy and to ward off their attacks. Indeed, this verse is a great encouragement for the believers, for it imbues their hearts with spirit and strength which nothing else can. 77. Allah becomes a party with the believers because they are justified in waging war against the disbelievers who are treacherous and ungrateful to Allah in spite of His many blessings and favors to them.
أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا وإن الله على نصرهم لقدير.
Permission to fight has been granted to those, for they have been wronged. Verily, Allah has the power to help them, for they have
78. This, verse 39, is the first verse of the Quran in which permission to fight was given in the month of Al-Hajj in the first year after Hijrah according to our research. Then the command to fight was given in verse 190, 191, 193, 216 and 244 of Surah Al-Baqarah, in Rajab or Shaban of AH. 2. 79. Allah surely has power over giving them victory. This assurance was urgently needed by the persecuted Muslims whose fighting strength at that time was very meager, not even 1,000 including all the migrants and the Muslims of Al-Madinah. On the other hand, the fighting strength of the Quraysh by themselves was much greater. Besides, they had all the other Mushrik clans of Arabia at their back and were joined later by the Jews as well. Therefore, this assurance was most opportune and the challenge to the disbelievers was very significant, for it meant to say that they were not fighting against a small number of the Muslims but against Allah. Therefore, you are welcome to fight if you dare.